근데 형책이랑 만났어?
Okay, I'm going to read it.
형책이랑 만났어?
Around the world in 80
형책이랑
days.
말할 거야?
Okay, go.
우리.
Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. Translated by George Makepeace Howell. Chapter 1, in which Phileas Fogg and Passepartout accept each other, the one as master, the other as man.
Mr. Phileas Fogg lived in 1872 and number 7, Cellulose, Burlington Garden, the house in which Sheridan died in 1814.
He was one of the most noticeable members of the Reform Club, though he seemed always to avoid attracting attention. An enigmatical personage about whom little was known.
It was known as that he was a polished man of the world.
People said that he resembled Byron. At least that his head was Byronic. But he was a bearded, tranquil Byron who might live on 1,000 years without growing old.
Certainly an Englishman, it was more doubtful whether Sir Phileas Fogg was a Londoner.
He was never seen on 'Change, nor at the bank, nor in the counting rooms of the city. No ships ever came into London docks of which he was the owner. He had no public informant. He had never been entered
any greens of court, either as a tempered Lincoln's in Gravesham, and no Irish voice had ever resounded in the court of a chancellor and then changer.
Or the ecclesiastical court. He certainly was not a man of actors, nor was he a merchant or a gentleman farmer.
His name was strange to the scientific and the law societies. He never was known to take part in the stage deliberation of Lawyer Institute of London.
The Artisans Association, or the Institution of Arts and Sciences.
He belonged, in fact, to none of the numerous societies which is formed in English capitals, from the harmonic to that to the
Phileas Fogg was a member of the Reform, and that was all.
The way in which he got admission to these exclusive clubs was simple enough. He was recommended by the Baring, with his whom he had an open credit.
Regularly paid at sight from his account current, which was always flush. Was Phileas Fogg rich? Undoubtedly.
But those who knew him best could not imagine how he had made his fortune, and Mr. Fogg was the last person to whom to fight for information.
He was not lavish, nor, on the contrary, avaricious. For whenever he knew that money was needed for a noble, useful, or benevolent purpose, he supplied it quietly and sometimes anonymously.
He was, in short, the least communicative man. He talked very little, seemed all the more mysterious for his taciturn manner.
His daily habits were quite open to observation, but whatever he did was so exactly the same thing that he had always done before, that the wits of the curious were fairly puzzled.
Had he traveled, it was likely, for no one seemed to know the world most familiarly. There was no spot so secluded he did not appear to have any intimate acquaintance with it.
Corrected with a few clear words the 1,000 conjectures advanced by members of the club as to lost and unheard-of travelers, pointing out the true probabilities and seeming as if gifted with
a sort of second sight, so often that events justifies the predictions, he must have traveled everywhere, at least in the spirit.
It was at least certain that Phileas Fogg had not absented himself from London for many years. Those who
were honored by a better acquaintance with him than the rest of the career, nobody could pretend to have ever seen him anywhere else.
And through reading the papers and playing whist, he often won at this.
He often won at these games, which had the silent one's harmonies to which his nature, but his winnings never went into the purse, being reserved at fund for his charities.
Mr. Fogg played not to win, but for the sake of playing.
And the game was in his eyes a contest, a struggle with difficulty, and a motionless, unwearying struggle congenial to his taste.
Phileas Fogg was not known to have either wife or children, which may happen to the most honest people, either relatives or near friends, which is certainly more unusual.
He lived alone in his house in Cellulose, with none penetrate a single domestic service to serve him.
Breakfasted and dined at the club, at hours mathematically fixed, in the same room, at the same table, never taking his meals with other members, much less bringing a guest with him, and went home
at exactly midnight, only to retire at once to bed. He never used closed chambers, which the reform provides for his favored members.
He passed 10 hours out of the 24 in Savile Row, either in sleeping or making his toilet.
When he chose to take a walk, it was with regular step in the entrance hall, with his mosaic flooring, or in the circular gallery, with its dome supported by 20 LED.
Red porphyry ionic columns, and illumined by blue painted windows.
When he breakfasted or dined, all the little club, its kitchen and pantries, its laboratory and dairy, each crowded his table with their most succulent stores. He was served by the gravest
waiters in dress coats and shoes with swan skin soles, who proffered the viands in special porcelain and on the finest linen. Club decanters of a lost mold contained his sherry, his port, and his
cinnamon spiced claret, whilst the beverages was refreshingly cool with ice, both a great coast from the American lakes.
If to live in this style is to be eccentric, it must be confessed that there is something good in eccentricity. The mansion in Savile Row, though not sumptuous, was exceedingly comfortable.
And the habit of its occupant was such as to demand the riches from the sole domestic, but the previous Fogg required him to be almost superhumanist, prompt and regular.
On this very 2nd of October he had dismissed James Forster because that luckless youth had brought him shaving water at 84 degrees Fahrenheit instead of 86, and he was awaiting his successor.
His successor, who was due at the house between 11 and half past.
Phileas Fogg was seated squarely in his armchair, his feet close together like those of a grenadier on parade, his hands resting on his knees, his body straight, his head erect. He was steadily watching
a complicated clock which indicated the hours, minutes, seconds, days, and months and years.
At exactly 11:30, Mr. Fogg would, according to his daily habit, quit Savile Row and repair to the Reform.
A light at this moment sounded on the door of the cozy apartment where the Phileas Fogg was seated, and James Forster, the diminished servant, appeared. A new servant, said he.
A young man of 30 advanced and bowed. "You are a Frenchman, I believe?" asked Phileas Fogg. "And your name is John?"
"Jean, if monsieur please," replied the newcomer's Jean Passepartout, a surname which has clung to me, because I have a natural aptness for going out of one business into another.
"Into another. I believe I'm honest, monsieur. But to be outspoken, I've had several trades. I've been an itinerant singer, a circus rider, when I used to vault like Leotard, and dance on a rope like Blondine.
Then I got to be a professor of gymnastics so as to make better use of my talents. Then I was a sergeant, fireman at Paris, and assistant at many a big fire.
But I quitted France 5 years ago, and wishing to taste the sweets of domestic life, took service as a valet here in England.
Finding myself out of place, and hearing that Monsieur Phileas Fogg was the most exact settled gentleman in the United Kingdom, I have come to Monsieur in the hope of living with him a tranquil life.
Tranquil life, and forgetting even the name of Passepartout. Passepartout suits me, responded Mr. Fogg.
You are well recommended to me. I hear the good report of you. You notice my condition? Yes, monsieur. Good.
Good. What time is it? 22 minutes after 11, returned Passepartout, drawing an enormous silver watch from the depths of his pocket. You are too slow, said Mr. Fogg.
Pardon me, monsieur. It is impossible. Your appointment is too short. No matter. It's enough to mention the hour.
Mention the hour. Now, from this moment, 29 minutes after 11 a.m. this Wednesday, 2nd October, you are in my service.
And Phileas Fogg took his hat and in his left hand, put it on his head on automatic motion, and went out without word.
Passepartout heard the street door shut once. It was his new master going out. He heard it shut again. It was his predecessor, James Forster, departing in his turn.
Passport heart remain on in the house in several.
Of chapter 1.
The end. Okay, it's a new story around the world in 80 days. Must be fun. And Fogg name is interesting. The London in England, this weather is like foggy weather. The name Mr. Fogg. It's easy to remember.